funding, factors contributing to the levy change, the levy certification 13, K14. We have some graphical analysis, and then our current year 13-14 budget. Talking about the levy and the levy process, there is a calendar. In September, the board certified the preliminary levy, and in November, the county mails out the levy notices to all the property owners in the district. And now, currently, we're having the public hearing as part of our regular board meeting, and later on in the meeting, you'll certify the final tax levy. Some things that affect our levy, there are issues that are driven by state level decisions. If there were changes in the state formula, if there were changes in our sales ratio, or any code compliances such as health and safety, the asbestos abatement, or any changes in those laws or codes. And then we have issues that are determined by our voters, any bond referendums or excess levy referendums. And then there are some local factors, the real estate market, any abatements, property improvements that weren't previously taxed, any changes in individually assessed market value, and then any changes in classification, homestead to rental, ag to homestead, those types of things. And then these are the factors that contributed to the levy changes for FY14. We have a 4% decrease in our adjusted net tax capacity and a 5.3% decrease in our referendum market value. Pupil units changed to 1.0 for grades K through 6. That includes all day, everyday kindergarten, and 1.2 for grades 7 through 12. This is a decrease in those weighting formulas. And so adjustments needed to be made in the formulas themselves need to be increased to keep the status quo, to keep our funding levels the same. There was a new student achievement levy that was implemented this levy cycle. There were increases in safe schools and career and technical levies, and that was legislative changes. The new location equity levy that reduces our excess levy referendum, and the new Q-comp levy. If you want to look at this graph, this is our referendum market value analysis, and this does show that our peak was in 2009, and you can see that we have decreased steadily since then. I do anticipate that this will level off and start to change the other way for ensuing years' levies. And that same thing with our adjusted net tax capacity. That also kind of was stable for about 4 years and now has decreased also in the last 2 years. And that does coincide with the economy and those things happening with the economy, decrease. What is included in the school district's levy certification? The levy and bonds that were voter approved. We do have the levy set by our state formula, so we have several levies that are set by state formula that the district does not have a choice. They could under levy, but then you would lose the aid portion of these levies as well. So there's equity, operating capital, transition, and community service that you levy for, set by state formula. And then the levies that are authorized by the state based on our local need, and there's several there. Reemployment, safe schools levy, career and technical, health and safety, facility leases, integration, Q-comp, OPEB, and deferred maintenance. The levy limitation analysis, 61% of our levy is voter approved levy, 28% of the levy is state determined formulas, and then 11% is our local discretion. Talking a little bit about the OPEB, the other post-employment benefit levy, our actual cost for 2013-14 for retiree insurance is $513,000, and that's the amount that the board has will be agreeing to levy for tonight for the 2013-14 levy certification. The state does have an overall statewide cap, however, there isn't a proration at this time. list of all of the levies that were approved, um, all the different components of our levy certification. In September, the board approved the preliminary levy of about $13,123,392, and right now we're looking at a levy for the general fund of $13,088,481. So it's a little bit less than what the board had approved in September. However, it is $828,000 higher than what the board approved for the general fund last year. Now you'll see the offsetting when we come to the other part of the levy certification. So overall our levy will be flat, but this portion of our levy, the other, you look on your levy certificate in the sheet that the county sends out, this would be other levies set by the district. That's going to see an increase. However, they'll see a corresponding decrease for their levy certification. For community service, we see an overall increase in community education over the preliminary, about $3,000 overall. It's up almost $12,000. And then the debt service. This is where we're seeing the decrease in the debt service of $752,000. So that corresponding offset from the general fund levies. And so overall, in September, the board approved a preliminary levy of $26,304,514. However, tonight, the board will be approving a levy of $25,291,569. So that's a significant decrease of a little over $1 million from what was sent out in by the county. The board will approve almost $1 million decrease from that amount. So that's an overall levy, stable levy of a 0.35% increase, $87,000 over last year. One of the, if you want to look at the summary, this is the summary of what the synopsis of all of those things for tonight. You can again see the overall levy is up just a 0.35%. We had anticipated in September it would be up 0.4, so we're really close to what we anticipated. So we have a stable levy. One of the other parts of tonight's Truth in Taxation meeting that we have to talk about is our 2013-14 budget. Just a reminder that the levy affects next year's budget. However, we're required to talk about the current year budget. So it's a little bit, so try not to confuse the two, but this is our current year budget. You can see that our overall final general fund budget will be decreasing about $2 million. Purposefully by the board, decreasing some of those fund balances for projects, mainly for projects that the district is doing throughout district-wide for the buildings. And then if we look at the remainder of food service, community ed, our building fund, you can see that we will be spending quite a bit of money in our building fund for all of the projects that are happening throughout the district. Any questions about the Truth in Taxation, the levy information? I know I went through it quite quickly. Like I said, nothing has changed from the preliminary. Overall, it's very similar to the preliminary levy. And what we said was going to happen, which would be that decrease in the debt service portion of our levy certification, so that would come out about zero. Unfortunately, we couldn't get all of this done before the levy information was sent to homeowners, and so they may see an increase, showing an increase, but when the actual comes out, it'll be flat.
So barring any increase in house value or property value?
Right. We can't adjust for house values or property assessments. That will always affect their overall taxes. But as far as the district is concerned, we're the levy that we're submitting to the county will be almost flat.
0.03%.
Right.
Any questions?
So I'm just hoping that what you're saying is that it's gonna stay stable at about 200 to 300, 200 to $225. Cause that's like 2.5 or 2.5 times increase, which is totally unacceptable.
Yeah, Mayor, we can address that.
And I will address that. What happens is that when I talk about the other local levies, let me see if I can go backwards here. That would be this line, the total general fund would be all of our other local levies. That is that line for our community. And yes, that did go up 828. What she's not seeing is the corresponding decrease in the voter approved levies on another line she would see, and she wouldn't see it on the current sheet that she received from the county in November, but she will see it on her final that there'll be a decrease in that levy category. So she will see the increase in one and then the decrease in the other category. However, it would not show on her levy sheet that she received. It will on the final.
So overall, barring taxes, house value probably has remained constant. We're estimating a point of 0.03%.
The county takes, right, and the county takes that information and it spreads it across all of the homeowners in our district. And so it really depends on how their valuation is from all the different homes and businesses, all, in ag land. So it gets spread across all those depending on the evaluation of all properties in the district. So it still may go up for some depending on their valuation. I mean, those are things that are out of the district's control.
I think this board has said it in the past, held very steady with that levy, that the last increase in our tax levy was ridiculously
Right.
stand with this board and sign that the board has tried to carry, not able to do anything about it. So
Good evening. This is Ella Nelson, and I'm very pleased to introduce her. You have to excuse my voice. I'm just getting over a little bit of a cold. I'm very excited to introduce Ella and the project that we've been working on. She is a sixth grader at Hidden Oaks, and in late August, I received an email from the elementary synergy teacher saying, here's this helicopter project, do you want to do it? And so naively, as my first year in this position, I forwarded on to the sixth grade teachers after looking at some of their physical science standards and thought, yep, sounds great. And sure enough, this project was due in late September, and we set out kind of putting together all the materials. And so I spent about once or twice a week for a month in their classes, and we talked about things like different types of forces. We went outside when the weather was much nicer and practiced kind of what happens with lift and spin and just airplanes, paper airplanes, and we even thrusted potatoes into the air and things like that. We talked also about global challenges and what a helicopter in 2050 could do for some of the global challenges that we have today. So Ella obviously really succeeded and kind of took this project and ran with it. Google Drive and Schoology were huge components in this project that we used a lot. And then some other cool things that we're doing in Synergy too is stock market game in advanced math 6th grade. We're starting mock trial, and some of our high school mock trial students are going to come in and help us lead mock trial with advanced social studies in 6th grade. Programs continue like the Geography Bee in January, Word Masters, and other games. So let me introduce Ella to you to tell her story about this project.
Okay, so first of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me to speak here tonight. And I'll just tell you a little bit about my helicopter. It's called Blue Copter, and it helps clean up oil spills and helps the wildlife affected by it. And so it is powered by hydrogen, and it also uses technology to clean up the oil without harming the wildlife. And it can, the tail, the rotors, and the landing gear can retract, so it turns into a speedboat because most of its work will be around water. And I just really enjoyed this experience to just the challenge of designing the helicopter, and it was fun.
Can you tell us about the award you won?
I was in the top 5 of the people who entered, and so I got a little prize pack, and I didn't get first place though, but
That's top 5 in the
Top
United
5.
States, right?
Yep.
Well, we're very proud of you, Elle. That is really quite amazing. I think being one of the top 5 is pretty much being number 1.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Congratulations to you. Keep up the good work. We're very proud of you. Good work. aside for citizens to address the board. Do we have any? Sure. Yeah. Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2. Is this any better? No? Now I think it's better. Okay, thank you. We'll go on to personnel items with Matt. Do I have a motion to accept the following candidates for employment?
So moved.
By Dan, second.
Second.
By Chad. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries 7-0. Okay, do I have a motion to rescind the contingent employment agreement? By Stacy, second. By Dan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries 7-0. Do I have a motion to accept the leave of absences as follows?
So made.
By Chad. Second.
Second motion.
By Rich. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries 7-0. Okay, do you have a motion to accept the, I'll read this right, the additional licensed staffing request?
I'll make that motion.
By Rich, second. By Stacy. Any questions for anyone on this? I know it's state and federal funds that are supporting this. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries 7-0. Additional support staff request. motion to accept the additional support staff request? By Stacy,
I'll second the motion.
second by Rich. Any questions for any one of these? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries 7-0. Thanks, Matt. We'll move on to old business. We have the kindergarten Spanish immersion recommendation. Jeff?
Good evening, Chair Sorensen, members of the board. Dr. River, I'd like to bring up a couple of committee members from the Spanish Immersion Committee. We're here tonight to present to you the formal recommendation coming forward on kindergarten Spanish immersion. We don't have all committee members here tonight, but we have Katie Morris, parent community member, Patrick Glenn, principal at Greenwood, and Rochelle Metzger, kindergarten teacher at Glendale. And these are all of the other committee members who worked with us on the immersion committee. You have in your packet a very detailed memo about all the different things with immersion. Purpose of the PowerPoint here is to give you the highlights. This has been a topic we've been talking about over the course of several board work sessions and meetings, and so we'll be going through it. But at the end of the presentation, as you have questions or would like to get the committee perspective, our committee members will be eager to jump in and share their insights about the recommendation that we're bringing forward to you tonight. And we're very pleased to be able to bring this forward to you to consider and talk about. Our first part of our recommendation is to offer a kindergarten Spanish immersion program at Edgewood School beginning in 2014-15, looking at an enrollment target of 75 students, particularly long-term sustainability, making sure we have kids all the way through from kindergarten to 5th grade. With 75 students, we would be recommending 4 sections of Spanish immersion. Looking at that 75 students, in previous communications we've talked about 3 teachers with 25 students per section and a para. And the more we've investigated that and looked at a couple things. One, the cost of 3 teachers and 3 paras relative to 4 teachers. There's not a significant amount of difference there. But the other component here too is looking at 18 to 19 students in a class. It is more comparable with many of our English kindergarten classes that we've had in the past. And then finally, it also allows for flexibility moving forward into the spring and summer to monitor enrollment, looking at our English classes, but also our immersion classes, to see if we could add more of those spaces beyond the 75 so that we're comparable across the board. So that is a slight difference there to bring your attention to. The school site, as I mentioned, recommending Edgewood School for K-2 immersion, and that's really potentially for 3 years. And if we're looking at our crystal ball, this would be a great place to have it. It is a primary building, as many of you in the community that have been here many years knowing that building was built for kindergarten and that primary feel. That's where we would want kindergarten to be, and so having immersion there in the center for kindergarten and primary students appears to be a good fit. But also, too, we have to be cognizant of growth and enrollment across the district. And so after 3 years, a couple things would happen. We would need to reconsider where grades 3-5 would go for immersion. The committee's not recommending Edgewood as that 3-5 site, and potentially within that period of time, we would most likely have to move immersion pending growth enrollment to another school site, or at least grade 3-5 to another school site. But for next year, kindergarten and 1st grade, as part of this, we're confident that Edgewood would be a good site for this program. Curriculum, we've talked about this a little bit before too. Standards would be the same as a traditional full-day kindergarten program. The core curriculum and technology is similar. We would be utilizing versions of translated. We would be using translated versions of our current curriculum as part of this. Technology resources with smart boards. Teachers having iPads and students having access to iPad cards would be part of this program, so there's consistency. In our research looking at immersion, a majority of the day would be in Spanish. So the times that students are in their classroom for those subjects, it would be in Spanish. with their specialist times largely in English. And then, like all classrooms, for sure, additional and alternative methods, or materials may be necessary for teaching and learning within immersion. So, student enrollment and selection. This is really laid out in more detail, but I wanted to talk about this simply because this is where dates and things fit for resident students as well as for kids considering open enrollment. The committee is recommending that resident students receive preference for the enrollment of the 75 spots for immersion. And what that breaks down to is January 23rd is the formal kickoff for kindergarten registration. And so we would be communicating to families to have their applications either postmarked or received at the Edgewood office on January 23rd, sometimes reflecting the mail and looking at how long that may get there. We would wait until Monday the 27th. We would be putting students in a random drawing and pulling them out to be notified for selection in the program. This is consistent with a practice that we've done in the past with lottery-based programs. I think a few years ago when we implemented all-day K, there was a lottery version, and this seemed to fit at the time. And when we spoke with elementary principals, this was something that we wanted to replicate again. Applications received after the 23rd, we would start to time and date stamp those. And after that initial drawing, we would go to those time and date stamp, and pending the number of spots that are remaining, would either offer those spots to those families, or we would start our waiting list. So I mentioned January 23rd is that formal kindergarten registration kickoff. We are putting a deadline for resident families to make a decision on March 7th. And then after that, we would start looking at our open enrollment students, which would be placed in a separate pool. If there were remaining spots, we would start going through the date and timestamp process, and according to the same guidelines that are listed above. After April 7th, we would really look at either resident or open enrollment students to fill out the remaining seats until filled. So just some real, the details and logistics there, but we would ask our open enrollment families to follow the same application deadlines. If they're interested in coming to the district as well as immersion, January 23rd would be a time for them to turn in their materials. The committee is also recommending a short-term leadership component in place, really to help with the startup, working with district teachers, families for planning and implementation for the next from January to August. And the components could have several looks to it. We have had internal discussions about having a lead TOSA who would work with planning, curriculum, but we also know too that might be difficult at the midpoint of the year. But also reaching out to kindergarten teachers that may help us in this planning, or even in consultation. And so looking at what that, pending board approval and moving forward with that, we would really, we would be looking for a lead teacher, a TOSA, for that period of time. But also know too that in the interim, trying to find that person, we may be reaching out and still start our work with implementation of this program. Our estimated budget request is $50,000, and that would come out of our assigned general fund, which is set aside for innovative programs. Excuse me. And then just next steps, pending board approval. We have a parent information night scheduled on January 9th, and then from there, just ongoing communications with families. I think suffice to say we've talked about a lot, but we don't have all the details ironed out, and knowing that between January and spring, there's going to be more details coming forward. We're want to get out to families. We would move forward on the leadership components, bring forward a name for this program. As of this time, we don't have a name yet, but that would be something we would be working on, as well as the curriculum side of things, and then implementing and monitoring the enrollment and selection process. So with that, we're at that point of questions.
Any questions from board members? We'll open it up first. I'll start. Rich?
I guess I saw up there that it's a yearly review, because one of my concerns that I've expressed to administration is you're setting aside classrooms in Edgewood, and those are mainly designed as kindergarten rooms, and now
at looking at planning with all-day kindergarten, we anticipated, and we talked about this at the board work session too, is we spent some time looking at all of our district buildings, and I spent some time talking with each of our building principals about where is the space that's out there in all of the buildings, and we identified space at Edgewood as well as each of the elementary schools for potentially immersion, but also to all-day kindergarten. And our pre-registration numbers are coming in that there's a high number of students looking at all-day kindergarten options. And so we looked at space across the board, knowing that with kindergarten there was going to be an increase, but also there may be an increase in other students too. When we looked at Edgewood, we know there's a primary basis there. I mean, it was designed as a kindergarten center, but certainly as we look at our space, it is primary, works well for kindergarten, and it could certainly work well for first and for second grade. Once we get to first and second grade, and I think as a committee we talked about that, there are some drawbacks simply with how the design of the building is. The gym space there is a multi-purpose room. It works well for kindergarten students, but we as a committee talked about that as we get into first and second grade, we would most likely have to access those facilities over at Westwood. Same thing with lunch. But from the standpoint of having primary kids educated or using those spaces for first or second grade, there didn't seem to be a high concern from the committee. And in looking at and talking with the principals, there wasn't a high concern about using the other buildings and facilities that we have in the district for kindergarten or other grade level purposes either.
Thank you. Yep. Any other questions?
I guess I'll just comment. When this proposal came before us during the study session, I was a little apprehensive about it, but seeing the response from the community, there is a demand out there for it, and I've always believed in offering choice, and I think that's this is one of those areas where there's demand for that program, and I believe we should offer that choice for those students.
I think we've had significant discussion about this in the workshop, so no questions. I think you've done a good job of informing us here process and what's been going on. I look forward to hearing more details as they come up. But I do have one question. Sometimes kindergarten parents are a little bit overwhelmed by the whole concept of kindergarten. And we're jumping to all-day kindergarten, so that already raises their anxiety a little bit. And then the option of having the opportunity to learn Spanish increases that. And so they want to make the right decision. What is your plan for a parent that gets their kid through kindergarten and says, gee, I wish I had them in Spanish and English in first grade?
Yeah, we've spoken about that in pretty good detail with the committee, knowing that if you're a parent that's looking at your kindergartner or incoming kindergartner to be an immersion, it's largely a parent choice. Every year when you go to first, to second, to third, it's going to become a little bit more difficult, simply because of the learning that the kids are having with that experience of having Spanish. In first grade, I didn't think we really felt that it was going to be that difficult of a transition if we were looking at students that may want to come into immersion at that time. But we certainly are going to have to investigate criteria. We're going to have to look at how other districts handle that, whether it's incoming kids from other immersion schools that are transferring into the district, or whether it's just a baseline test. Because we know at certain points along the way we may lose students, which is why we are looking at the 75 for sustainability. But we also know too that there may be opportunities to bring kids in, and whether that's our Spanish-speaking EL students or whether it's strong students that have had some Spanish education or something in the background. We just want to be very sure that we're able to help parents with that guidance along the way, whether it be first grade or third grade or fourth grade, so that they're just aware of those options and we can have those conversations with them.
And my understanding is the parents will be a little more engaged in the whole process.
Yeah.
Not that we have full Spanish, but is it possible that there could be some access for parents that are looking that maybe kindergarten wasn't the right time, but first grade would be to maybe get their kids started in that vein?
think so. I mean, I think it's something that we're gonna that we'd have to develop. I don't think it's outside the scope of what we would be doing, because we know that the needs of kids change, along the way. And so, I think right now, I think that's a logistic we would just have to talk more and figure out.
We're open for the discussion.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's going to be some options for kids, and we want to be able to meet them at different levels. And they might come in at a different time.
She prompted a question, reminded me of a question. And there's, on the flip side of that, the children aren't going to be held in that if the parent says mid-year, this isn't working for my child. They'll be able to transfer out. Correct.
Dan?
First of all, I'm supportive of the concept. I think right from the get-go, I certainly thought this was a good idea. And Edgewood seems like a logical choice in year one. To me, the out years, even years 2 and 3, are a little sketchy at Edgewood, and I think I'm sure that would be with you actually. So I look forward to shedding some light on those details that we are not quite, especially when we get out to years 4 and 5. I think we need to, as quickly as possible, iron out those details where we're going to house it. We will be upsetting the apple cart, a fully functioning, working elementary school right next door in year 2. And I'd be a lot more comfortable with details as quickly as we can come with them. But we do have some time. Year 1 will be a pretty simple transition, I think. And in the out years, I'm looking forward to more detail.
Good. Any further questions? Mike?
I think those of you that have known my time on the board going back to my original time, I think in 2003, all I had ever asked was, can we ask the question of our community? And so I'll echo you, Rich, that I think there is a strong enough sentiment of support in the community. I think Dr. Groover and Jeff, you kept us apprised of the preliminary, non-binding, but still the indications from the incoming kindergarten parents that there is strong support, I believe, in the community. So I'm glad to see that, and I'm glad to hear that my colleagues here on the board have seen that also, and it sounds like this is going to go through. And I also am appreciative of the willingness of the board to take action on this now without having all those details ironed out. I think the reason why this is coming forward now is that there's that window of opportunity with the state indicating that all-day kindergarten will be funded. And so, I will echo also that ideally we would have had a little bit more time to have fully vetted a lot of the questions that are out there. But I think I've got total trust and confidence in the committee and the structure that we'll put in place here these next 6 months to plan this out so that a lot of those open questions will hopefully get answered, or at least a plan for answering them as we move forward. So I'm enthusiastic and I'm excited to see that this program is I think going to be coming a reality here in our district. I think it's just one more thing that we'll be able to kind of another feather in our cap of us truly being, I think, one of the leading school districts, not only in the metro area, but I think across the whole country. So I'm excited about this vote tonight.
Yes, 23% of the people who've responded, according to what I have here, have wanted to be in Spanish immersion. It looks like we have, 58 who've responded already, so I don't think we'll have much of a problem getting to 70. My only issue would be next year and the years after, physical location, just not of the program, because it was made for really small kids. They walked me through and showed me every room and how hard it would be for third graders.
Any other questions? I too would like to thank the committee and Jeff for your work. It's been very quick, but I think it's been very thorough. And I think we've learned from the mistakes of other districts, so I commend you and appreciate that. So, any other questions? I'd like to defer to Mike for the motion.
I will make the motion that we approve the Spanish language immersion program.
Do I have a second? By Lee. Any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
to new business. We have the resolution awarding the sale of district general obligation capital facilities bonds.
I do have Gary Olson from Ehlers here to discuss this. I'm wondering, at the pleasure of the board, if we could also move letter G up. Gary will be discussing that as well, and with the weather being what it is, it would be nice if you could have these two items together. So it'd be an adjustment in the agenda.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjust the agenda? By Chad, second. By Dan. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 7-0. We'll move G up to letter B.
So I'll let Gary Olson from Ehlers discuss these two items.
The first item I understand is the $3,205,000 general obligation capital facility bonds. You approved the authorization of the sale of those bonds at your meeting last month. You have a sales resolution here. We're actually going to take the bids on Wednesday. Part of the reason for taking the bids on Wednesday is this particular kind of bond requires a 30-day waiting period from the time you approve your initial resolution till we sell the bonds, because the law does provide if someone were to go and get a petition, they could get a petition and require you to have an election. I've never seen that happen in a Minnesota school district, but it is something that legally happens. So rather than taking the bids today, we're going to take the bids on Wednesday. And so we have what we call a parameters resolution. You guys have done that in the past in your district. Two things I'd want to say about that. One is that if you look at the actual resolution under sale, under 1.02, right now there's a blank in there for the parameter, and we would suggest that would be at, we're going to suggest putting 3.1% in there. That's higher than we expect. We want to have a little cushion. We're expecting something more in the 270, 280, 2.7, 2.8 range, but we want to give us a little bit of flexibility. Also, it does say in there that it isn't approved unless you get a positive recommendation from us, and certainly we will be immediately talking to Julie once we get the bids and going over that issue depending on where that rate comes in. The other thing is that the way this resolution is set up right now in that section, it says that the chair and superintendent are the ones that are authorized to accept the proposal once we get that on Wednesday. Just want to make sure that the chair and superintendent would both be available on Wednesday. Similar to what we've done in the past, we'd have that proposal form from the underwriter that we'd be sending over late morning, early afternoon for you two to sign. So we just want to make sure that that's the right people, because if one of you is not going to be available, now would be a good time to amend that resolution. But so, and again, remember, these are bonds that finance energy projects and security projects, part of the big overall plan that you're working on. But that's what this piece does.
Do I have a motion to accept the resolution awarding the sale of the district bonds of $3.205 million? By Stacy, second.
Second.
By Dan. Any questions? Seeing none, it's a roll call vote. Chad?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
Lee? Stacy? Aye. Dan?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
That carries 7-0. Approving of the lease levy option certificates of participation.
Okay. Now this, unfortunately, we thought we had this already done last month, and about a week and a half ago, as I was traveling, luckily not driving but riding in the car, I got a voicemail from the bank that you had chosen, the one that had provided with the variable rate reset proposal, that said that their credit committee had just met and decided not to do it, and it had nothing to do with your credit or your worthiness to pay it back. This one particular banker on the credit committee didn't like the idea about a 20-year lease, and they knew what they were bidding on when they bid 20 years, so it was really embarrassing. We had never had anything like that happen in the past, where somebody withdrew didn't follow through with the bid after they had bid on a lease.
and the other thing that they were looking at was normally on a collateral, well, what you provide for collateral on this is the footprint, and you provide the addition as collateral. They were looking to say, well, we want the whole high school as collateral. Well, that didn't make any sense. I don't know if that's, one, I'm not sure that would be even legal. And secondly, if someday down the road you needed to put another addition on, you would have already given up all your collateral for the whole building. So between the combination of those two, they decided that this guy decided he didn't want to do the deal, and he was one guy in this group, but it was enough to shut the thing down. So we immediately kind of scrambled, went into talked to Julie right away that day, started talking, going back to Capital One, talking to them about, you did make a proposal. Are you still interested in doing something with this? And after working with them for a couple days, we actually now have a proposal that's better than the proposal that they had submitted back a month ago. The interest rate is just a little bit lower. We had originally been at 4.55, and now they came down to 4.45. No change in fees, and they actually, before, if you remember, one of the things that you didn't like about that proposal is you couldn't prepay it for the first 10 years. Now you can prepay beginning with year 6. After 5 years, you can prepay it. The only issue is there is a little penalty for that for years 5 to 10, and it gradually decreases over that period of time, but it does give you the opportunity to prepay it. So it's a better provision from the prepayment penalty issue, and it's a better actual interest rate than what they had proposed initially. So, and one of the things is that's important about this is because of the other financing we're just approving, and you're going to do the turf leases next, and the capital facility bonds close next year, and the turf lease will be next year. If this had pushed over into next year, we would not have been able to bank qualify either of those two projects. This one was not going to be bank qualified anyway, so we've got them to agree to really move this thing fast. We're going to actually close this on Thursday. So Julie's already signed a whole bunch of documents. We got a whole bunch of documents ready. I'm going to bring them all back to the office tomorrow morning, and we'll be able to close this on schedule. So that would be our recommendation, is to move ahead with this proposal from Capital One. And you do have a very short resolution that's only got like 3 points in it. Basically what it does is accept the proposal from Capital One and then authorize Julie to complete all the documentation and complete all the closing of the issue. So that's what we have for the lease purchase.
Okay, do you have a motion to accept the lease levy purchase certificates of participation? By Lee, second. Second. By Dan. Questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries 7-0. Thank you. Bid tabulations and award recommendations for the 2014 building improvement equipment package. Mr. Delwood.
Good evening, Chair Sorensen, School Board, Dr. Gruber. I have before you a request to accept bids from the Twin Oaks equipment package bid. If you'll note on the letter in front of you from Nexus, the bids came in very well. $256,530 under budget, which is a nice number. And again, the district is purchasing the equipment, so we'll save markup and sales tax, which was included in that budget. So it's a good number. I'd like to award to Schwab Wollheimer Lubrat for mixed flow axle fans, modular water cooled chillers, fluid coolers, modular energy recovery, modular air units, and existing air handling coils in the amount of $530,480. Air terminal units to Midwest Mechanical Solutions in the amount of $24,990. And for boilers and boilers accessories, Ryan Company Incorporated in the amount excuse me, of $345,500. Also, along with your packet is the bid tabs for the other bidders. And with that, I would look for approval to accept bids.
Do I have a motion to accept the bid package as stated in the board packet.
So moved.
By Dan, second.
I'll second the motion.
By Rich. Any questions? Thank you. It looks very favorable.
Thank you.
So, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That carries 6-0.
Could I just,
Sure.
and this is also, this whole package keeps this Group 8 project budget within budget and $256,530 under budget, which is a good thing.
Move on to elementary assessment grading report recommendation. Ms. Knatum.
Good evening, Chair Sorensen, members of the board, Dr. Gruber. Thank you for having us here this evening. Tonight I'm joined by members of the Elementary Assessment Grading and Reporting Committee, Rochelle Metzger, Sean Bodette, and Shayna Bates. Our elementary committee has been researching best practices in assessment grading and reporting since January 2013. Tonight we're here seeking approval to move forward with our research and implementation. Before the meeting, I distributed an updated elementary AGR committee recommendations document. This document has been updated since we last spoke with you to reflect that the elementary specialists met to determine strand language for the report card. That's on the second page and goes into the third. And then on the very last page, our AGR committee met one more time since then also, and is putting forth recommendations on homework at the elementary level. We'd be happy to answer any questions you have this evening on this document, and we'll go through our presentation and take any questions at the end. Tonight we will provide an overview of research and best practices for assessment grading and reporting that we found as we've met. We'll review current practices in the district and future practices that we're hoping to implement in these areas. We'll also share our committee's next steps in this process. Like I said, we've been working since January 2013, and there are areas that we'd like to continue research in. Our committee's recommendations are based in research. It is grounding our decisions. This slide illustrates some of the research that we have looked at in making our decisions. Thomas Guskey was our main researcher. He's a professor out of Kentucky. A small cohort from the committee attended a 3-day workshop by Thomas Guskey, where he walked us through research and the implementation strategies. Guskey research is cited by many other researchers, school districts, and states. I'll pass this slide off to Rochelle.
I guess what we took away from the research was basically that standards are defined as precisely what we want students to know and be able to do as a result of their experiences in school. That standard-based grading aligns our teaching and that is focused on state standards with assessment and reporting to parents. And that common assessments across the grade level within a content area measure students' proficiency on standards. And finally, I want to end with a quote: standards-based grading provides parents with a clearer and more detailed picture of their child's academic performance in school, along with information on other important school-related behaviors. And on the next slide, you'll see a sample, and this is just an example. It's not the one, it's similar to what we are considering on the committee. This is one out of Kentucky. The biggest difference that you'll notice is that the student's academic achievement is separate from the skills that support learning. And so that is, we're kind of looking at that. And also, there's a narrative on the report card, and what that is the first paragraph will be a district template that gives an overview of concepts covered during that grading period. And also, there's a space for teachers to write their own comments specific to that student's strengths and areas for development.
The next 2 slides kind of highlight current practice that we have right now, and then what the committee would be recommending moving forward based on the research that we've been doing. We currently calculate grades based on percentages, averages, kind of an accumulation of points, and our recommendation would be moving toward determining grades. Our committee is still exploring different methods for determining that final grade. We've looked at a few listed there, looking at mode or trend-based grading. That's an area we still need to continue to research and discuss. We really want to get it down to just summarizing that student learning on that final report card. A couple other changes that we'd be recommending. We currently have Skyward as our student information system. We'd be recommending moving to Infinite Campus. Skyward is mainly used as a tool right now for reporting final grades, where Infinite Campus would be teachers using an online grade book as well as reporting final grades. Our current symbols are 1, 2, 3, 4 for those final grades, and we'd be moving toward a below a meets or exceeds standards. Rochelle talked a little bit about the separation of the skills that support learning and academic areas. We do that to a point now. We separate some of those work habits out. We'd be moving more toward putting those in each content area rather than one overall picture. And then going from 4 report cards that we have now to 2 report cards with our parent conferences lining up at the end of the first and third quarter, and those would include a progress update for parents as part of that elementary communication plan. We also have our curriculum committees working on common assessments right now for each area, and as part of those common assessments, we would include a cover sheet. This is kind of a sample of one for first grade in math. The cover sheets are going to be part of that communication with parents. They'd be going with each of the common assessments, those summative assessments we have. The cover sheets highlight the strands within the subject area and then the specific benchmarks that were assessed in that particular unit. And then it gives parents a good picture of student proficiency on those different benchmarks.
As we align our work, our teaching with assessment at the elementary level, we've renewed conversation on the 2 different types of assessment. What Sean just showed you, that would be on a cover of one of our summative assessments. But right now, formative assessment would be assessment for learning. This is focused on how this information can inform students, what the student is understanding, and then how that can affect and change teachers' teaching. And it's not about the accountability, but it's about the practice for formative assessments. And then, like what Sean showed you, what we do a lot of communication, part of our communication plan would then be on the summative assessment, which is the assessment of the learning. Assessments are given to students at the end of the learning, which shows the accumulating demonstration of what the student has learned. And these assessments are used by the teacher at the end of instruction to evaluate a student's growth, basically, their learning of it, and then used to assign the grades. Our next steps, as a committee, our next steps include a list of items that we will continue to research and develop. And here's a list of what we have on our agenda. And then that's basically our presentation for you tonight. If you have any questions that we can answer, we'd love to hear them.
Do you have any questions? Rich?
How do you plan to communicate these changes to the parents?
We're looking at putting together documents as a committee. We've begun already. We're looking at a trifold document. We'll also be utilizing the district website and other means of probably also through Schoology and other of our communication tools. But absolutely, the committee has already started making a trifold document, and I've also started to look at how other districts have communicated this effectively. And I'd like to do a question and answer document of frequently asked questions. So as we transition, I'll make sure to do that also.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mike?
So as we transition to standard based, I'm having a hard time in my mind understanding how somebody can exceed meeting a standard, because you gave us an example up there of I can count by 2s, I can count by 5s. I mean, in some cases, I think some of these are pretty black and white. They either can or they can't. And I'm sure that probably parents are going to have questions on, we all believe that we live in Lake Wobegon and we're all above average, right? So how is little Johnny or Susie going to demonstrate that they exceed the standard when it's no longer a point-based system? I can surmise that we'll probably have quite a few of those questions coming to us.
It'll definitely depend on
So that will be part of trying to give examples of here would be the ability for them to, at the grade level, demonstrate
Absolutely.
exceed.
And what we're kind of playing with in math right now would be to have another section like down here for those exceeds skills.
Great.
And add those to the end of the test.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion to accept the committee's report on grading and recommendation for elementary assessment? By Dan. Second?
I'll second the motion.
By Rich. Any further questions?
Are we approving this to go forward?
Yes. Yes. Okay.
To go forward, not to implement, continuing research.
No, I believe it's an implementation.
I might add, I know this committee has been working diligently for the last year plus on this topic. And I know in the past we've had overlap between report cards and conferences, just that one topic alone of trying to do all that at one time. So knowing that you've taken the time to really work out what that might look like for parents so that they're getting consistent messages from the teacher home about their students' performance, and then the timeliness of the report cards, I think would be meaningful to parents and provide conversations that is an ongoing process for them. So I really commend your work. I think it meets the standards that we set for ourselves here in this district to really give parents quality information that's meaningful to them and continue to get better at doing that. So keep leading the way, and thank you for that.
Amy, I think I agree with moving towards this. I think the biggest challenge is probably going to be educating the parents. I had some feedback from the public just on it, as I know neighboring districts have gone to this, and whether or not how it was gauged, if it was successful, was basically the communication to the parent side. So I guess I would ask that, before is maybe just to see some of that communication. If you have samples once you're ready, is that we could maybe just see what's going to be going out beforehand.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to share them with you. Yes. We're also, there's a group of us that are kind of piloting, not necessarily piloting, but kind of starting the implementation already this year. And my families have been receiving this cover sheet already, and I've been getting feedback from them to try and figure out how that's going to go. And then as we're going to be working with Infinite Campus, I think this next, after the first semester, and to try and see how we can plug in those grades, and then maybe even send home a new report card and get parent feedback from that, at least, this second part of the year, so that we can kind of see how we can implement it fully, feedback on that.
And that just brings up the learning curve as far as the staff. I mean, understanding, I'm assuming it's probably easier for parents, but is there, what kind of?
We met with staff, a presentation was made to staff on October 31st, and we'll have continued, we have a plan in place to continue to meet with them and present during early release days and staff work days throughout the spring. We have several days set on the calendar already.
I have a motion and a second. Any further questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That carries 7-0. Thank you. We'll move on to graduation testing requirement report. Ms. Kennedy and Mr. Bennett.
Well, good evening, Chair Sorensen, Dr. Gruber, and the board. Tonight we'd like to talk about some of the changes that have happened at the state level in regards to testing, graduation testing at the secondary level. Back in May of 2013, this past spring, legislation changed. It used to be that there were assessments that students need to pass to gain a diploma in a Minnesota secondary school, and there was a grad test in writing, math, reading, math, and writing. And since that legislation in May, the state has widened the avenues to gain a diploma in Minnesota, recognizing that there are more than just the assessments that they had named that are quality assessments that show that students are ready for their next step.
Good evening.
achievement. And in fact, many of them have a career portion within the assessment. And I know that has been something that the board has requested that we do more of at the high school level, and that would give us that opportunity. The state currently will request that schools give the MCA test in April. Ninth graders will no longer take the written composition test. That's been dropped by the state as a graduation requirement. However, 10th grade will take the reading MCA test, and 11th graders will take the math MCA test. If those students, any of those students that pass that test with a 50 or higher, would no longer have to take the grad retake test in order to graduate. They would be exempted then. But for those students that do not pass those tests, the other options would be to take, as you see in your packet, there's multiple tests, the ACT test or SAT test, and if they were required to pass the reading grad, if they previously failed that as ninth graders, including this year's seniors, they would have to include the writing composition portion of the test. The AccuPlacer is a test that shows students what levels they would begin at in colleges. KeyWorks is a job skills assessment system, and it helps develop successful career paths. The ACT Compass is a test that evaluates reading, writing, math, and English as a second language. And the last one is the ASVAB test, which is one of the most widely used tests in the world, aptitude test for the armed services, and we would be able to do that. The AFAB is a composite test, so they would have to take the entire thing, as is the ACT and the AccuPlacer. However, if the student needed to take the reading, for example, grad test, they could take just a segment of either the word keys or the compass test rather than taking the entire thing. If students are taking the test now and fail, they can choose any of these. Some of them are free, including the AFAB, but the state would reimburse the ACT test, the Work Keys test, and the Compass test. The school originally would pay for the test. We would keep record of that, and then in one lump fee, yet to be determined what month or when that would happen, the state would reimburse the schools back. So in essence, it's kind of helping in two ways. The students are getting probably more out of this test than taking a 3-hour retake test multiple times. And these students really should be in the classroom rather than using that time. The state recognizes that. The students that have previously taken the ACT test and then have to take a retest, they can still use that ACT test or any of these, but the state wouldn't reimburse them. This is just from going from this point on. The state knows that not all sizes fit the same people, and we really think that it's really going to be beneficial to our students in general and as a whole.
Thank you. Any questions? Please.
Have we been giving out all these tests already? I mean, previous to this, have we been doing these tests for people?
I would say that there's a large percent of our students being college bound take the ACT and have been taking the ACT for some time. Those students that are going into the military take the ASVAB, and it's offered by the military, which is a free test, and they've even offered to come in and test our students for free. They have a testing coordination group that would do that. So many of the kids have already taken these tests. Keep in mind, we also have the PLAN test, which is a college assessment test and a career assessment for 10th graders, and we'll continue to do that. We will only continue the grad portion retesting for those students that choose to go that route. And they would request that in advance, and then we would test them as we do now. So we'll continue to do what we are doing now, but it's really the retakes that we would offer these tests to allow the students to be exempt from exempt from passing those tests.
And
So all students will take one of these tests?
State requires that 10th graders this year take the math, or take the reading, and 11th graders take the math. All of them need to.
Okay, all right. And if they don't pass, that's
If they don't pass, they have the option of continuing that route with retests as we've been doing since the state started this.
right.
Will allow that, or any of these tests would exempt them from having passed it.
I get it. And that's the new part, right? That's
Yep.
new, that's the new part.
That's the new part.
Okay, okay.
And 9th graders no longer taking the written composition test.
any further questions? Thank you. We'll move on to the 2013 payable 2014 final levy certification.
In your packet, you have the final levy certification that mirrors the information that was presented in the truth and taxation hearing at the beginning of this meeting. So it's a board vote to approve the final levy.
Okay. Do you have a motion to accept the 2013 payable 14 final certification?
So moved.
By Stacy.
I'll second the motion.
Second by Rich. Any questions for Julie? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That carries 7-0. Thanks.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the final 2013-14 budget approval.
Tonight we're going to talk about the enrollment in our final budget. When the board approved the preliminary budget in June, we were budgeting an enrollment of 7,269. And as of October 1, we were 7,443 students. We do take into consideration, because we do not receive funding for our PSEO students, we do subtract all of our full-time PSEO students from that amount for our budget purposes, and then half of the PSEO students that attend school part-time in the district and part-time in the college. And then we've also had historical student reduction, just for different reasons. They may decide to go to another school, or move out of the district, or attend, or it could possibly be a dropout. Many times it's mainly because they're attending another school, or they've moved out of the district. So we historically see a reduction of about 70 students. And so that does leave us at the end of the year at really close to what we originally budgeted on 7,273. So we're about 4 students off. So for the time being, we are leaving our enrollment as we budgeted in June and making no adjustments to that number. From June until today, we've had several board meetings in which we have had the board approve some expenditures, and I'm going to just do a synopsis of all those expenditures, where that money is coming from, and then that gives us our final budget. So earlier this year, we did implement the one-to-one technology, so we've had an increase of 0.3 network systems tech of $12,000, a full-time tech integration specialist, $62,900. We purchased staff iPads at $264,500, and we've also purchased student iPads of $505,985. So we have a total technology budget of $845,385. Also, at the beginning of the year, the board approved some 3 additional transportation routes for approximate cost of $150,000. Immersion startup of $50,000 and staffing of $365,023. So another total of $565,000 for 23 for those expenditures. So a total between the technology and these, we have just a little over $1.4 million of additional expenditures. We also had some capital projects due to all of the projects that are happening here throughout the district. We had two items, the Twin Oaks boiler plant and the Twin Oaks domestic water heaters that were on the Group B project, but because Twin Oaks is being opened up so much this summer, we felt that it was important that those be brought up and implemented this summer. And so to pay for them, we are using capital fund reserve dollars for those two projects. And then we also have the Laker Field ADA accessibility of $55,000 to provide an access for our disabled students and members of the community to access the Laker Field. That's $55,000. Carter Lake High School track resurfacing of $175,000. That will come from a fund balance also, but for deferred maintenance. And then we have the Twin Oaks safe entrance. They're our last school in the district besides the high school to have a safe and secure entrance where parents are required to go to the office to get to the rest of the building. And that approximate cost of about $300,000. We don't anticipate it'll be that much, but we're budgeting $300,000 at this time. So for a total of $1.28 million for those capital expenditures. I do want to go through exactly where we're taking that money from. We have undesignated of $580,000, almost $581,000. We have a sign for technology of $277,500, a sign for innovative programming $314,500, and a sign for class size reduction $237,500, and then our capital expenditures at $1.2 million. So a total of $2.69 million of expenditures since June that the board has approved. Here's the budget that's outlined. This is what we typically see with even within our audit. We utilize the same layout. You can see those assigned areas, the 277 in technology. We have the 487 for class size reduction, 314 for innovative programming. So those areas, and then we also have some additional unassigned operating that is added to the original amount that was up there. We also down at the very bottom, the operating capital and the deferred maintenance will show those additional expenditures. And you can see we still have fund balance in those two on line 7 and line 9 at the bottom for all of those capital projects that the board has approved. At the end of the day, for the total general fund unassigned and assigned, we'll have a total, or anticipating a total of $8.1 million. That's just a little over 12%, almost 13% fund balance. Our board policy is 8 to 12%, so we're right in that range for the end of this year. If we look at the remainder of our funds, our Fund 2 has changed very little from the preliminary budget. Our community ed, we are seeing a decrease in our fund balance, higher expenditures just due to some additional programming. Our building fund, we anticipate with all of the projects that we're doing that we'll spend the majority of those dollars down this year. Our debt service, we are spending down that fund balance a little bit. Anticipated that we would spend that down also. We're only required to have 5% of a fund balance in there, so this is a way to give those dollars back to our community. And then our internal service fund is our self-insured health and dental, and those programs are running very well. So we'll see that fund balance continue to increase, is what we want that to happen. And then our OPEB, we'll see that go up slightly this year also. It's a lot of information, but I do think our board has had several work sessions on this budget, a lot of discussions in committee meetings, And I feel very confident and comfortable presenting this budget for a final approval from the board.
Do I have a motion to accept the final 2013-14 budget?
So moved.
By Stacy, second. By Chad. Any questions for Julie on this? I know we just finished a board study session covering this. So. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries 7-0. Thanks.
Thank you.
Fall activities update, Ms. Fuller. I know. I saw her. Mr. Lund? Ms. Fuller? Busy week in the schools.
I just made my way from ski club, middle school ski club, to intramural basketball to here. So I still have my boots on and sweating from running. But Eric and I put together a PowerPoint for our presentation. Jeff's always done that for me when I've been a co-presenter. Sorry. Finishing 7-3 this year. A little bit of disappointment, I know, on the team based on not making it to the Dome for the final time. But they played their hearts out, and that last game could have gone either way. It was a tough one. And then boys soccer finished also as runner-up in the section finals, losing to Edina, which also was a tough loss for the team. Girls soccer as well, we were able to host those for sections, and they had a fine performance, losing a tough one to Eden Prairie 1-0. And they played very well together this season. And then girls tennis was also this fall. They were the conference champions again, 17-3-1, so they had a super season. They were our section champs and placed 4th in state, and we also had Crowell and Hall go as the consolation doubles champions. Right below that, we have girls swimming and diving. They were section champions and conference champions as well. They ranked 14th in the state, and then we posted a picture of some of their results online as well. Cross country girls finished 3rd place in the conference, which was the same as last year. And then cross country boys was 4th in the conference, and last year they were 9th in the conference, so they made quite some improvements this year as a team. They had a lot of participation and really worked on things this year as well. They were 3rd in their section, and then we had Trenton Galloway, who finished 21st in state. Volleyball had a record of 23-6. Last year they were 14-11, so again, a lot of improvement. That was kind of the theme of this fall. There was quite a few teams that really made some strides. They were 3rd in conference, and they lost in the section quarterfinals to Laconia. Looking ahead to activities, we had the fall musical this fall, which was able to run over 2 weekends, Legally Blonde, and last year it was only 12 153 last year, and this year we were able to host 1697 in the community. A lot of great responses, some great articles, and the theater group was definitely pleased with how they did. Band, this year we have 150 students, 240 if you count all the freshmen that are involved in band. Fall Chamber has 40 students, and we also had 20 students participating in the fall musical. This year with surveys, every year we try to survey the fall activities, both parents and students. We were able to get 165 parent responses this year, improvement from last year, that was 125, and then students, we were able to get 189 responses this year. And I sent a little blurb to let people know that we use Schoology this year, so because the students are on Schoology, we were able to put that out there to them in their message system, and created an all students group so that we could post that there. It's always been posted on the website in the past, and so students were able to access it because they go in and check messages a little more frequently through Schoology. So that helped us get a lot more feedback and a lot more overall feedback as well. Focusing on honoring the game, kind of brought along just a little handout that I'll go through page by page. Just kidding. Little handout. Why we play. Book that we are working together with PLAY. This has kind of been our focus. For many of you maybe know that Eric Rodin has been kind of a key player in getting this to our community through PLAY, and then also through the high school coaches community as well, and working on that. So it's been a great thing in terms of what we're doing with our leaders, and I'll show that on a later slide. Honoring the game, respecting the rules. We also got our feedback from the Minnesota State High School League, and that's not included in your slide presentation, but I know the board members have a copy of it. Basically, you want to score, 5s are the best, and they give you our average scores, and overall, Eric and I went through this, and we felt like we had some great responses. It's based on how we are as a host site, how we greet the officials, their interactions with our coaches, and how they feel our coaches do in terms of honoring the game and being respectful to teammates and opponents. And we did very well overall with all that. We were pleased with our ratings for that as well. Emphasizing effort, and also obviously everybody wants to win, but emphasizing effort, rewarding that, just kind of looking at how different students saw that and how parents saw that. It's important for us to make sure we're making those connections with the players on our team, and so we want to make sure that kids are getting what they should be getting out of it. The biggest question at the end is, would you like to have your son or have your student to have this coach again? Parent responses was just about 80% yes. Student responses was 84% yes. So that tells us that for the most part we are doing a good job with connecting coaches and players with their philosophies and with the goals of the game and what we're aiming for. The Challenge Cup, so from season to season, that's the South Suburban Conference competition, kind of, where you see how you do, and then it also goes into the other 96 schools that participate in this. And we are currently 33rd out of 96. Last year we were 12th. We had a few teams that finished first in their section and then went on to state, and that's where you get your points. When you finish runner-up, unfortunately you don't get points for that, but we had a lot of teams that were right there, so we could have made that up, closer to where we were last time if we had had those teams that kind of missed out in that last game, make it one more game. So that helped us out. The teams that earned us points this time were Adapted Soccer, earned 2.5, and Tennis earned 36 points for us. Like I said before, with Why We Play, the culture that we're working on, that's been a big focus this fall, both within our South Suburban Conference. We've gotten a group of students together for a leadership meeting with all of the different schools in our conference and hosted that out at the ELC building. And then we've also done leadership meetings individually with coaches. Eric has done those. And then we try to have group coach meetings about once a month, sometimes every month and a half, to check in and see how things are going and have some type of information or motivational type information to give out to them as well. The SAC meetings that we host for the captains and leaders is also about every 2 weeks. We have that on Fridays, and we try to either have a speaker that can give them some insight into part of their game, part of their thinking about the game, just encouragement in some way, and helping them to see what they can get out of being as a part of a team. And then the Why We Play initiative is the final part of that. Just a little update also on middle school fall update. Basically, we just gave participation numbers. Girls swimming is hosted in the fall, and girls tennis. And they had quite a few participants there. And then we also had 64 additional middle school participants who participated on varsity level or JV or varsity level sports in our building as well, because the programs listed there have students eligible starting in 7th grade. So cross-country running, volleyball, swimming, and soccer. We also have 10 teams prepping right now for a competition this coming weekend for middle school robotics. And they've been in the thick of things for about the last month and a half, kind of gearing up for that as well. This fall for intramurals, we offered intramural ping pong for the first time. We had 25 participants, and we would always pick up a few more here and there as they walked through. We did it right in the entryway of the building, and so as robotics walked through or as a band concert was happening, things like that, once in a while we had a few dads join in and want to challenge some of the players, so it was pretty fun. And then we led up to a tournament. We kind of let kids play each other throughout the weeks, and then we led up to a tournament at the end. We had 2 tournaments, and then I just put the pictures up there of 2 of our tournament champs at the end. So it's been an exciting fall, and winter is off and running as of a few weeks ago, and the intramurals and middle school ski club started today. So, any questions?
Any questions, Rich?
You forgot my favorite activity, the mountain biking team, but 6th place in state.
Which one?
The mountain biking team.
Oh, yeah.
Finished 6th place in
Yeah.
state, and they were #1. All the teams above them were compositor teams, combination teams, and Prior Lake was the sole, a singular high school, and they got 6th place. But a question for you.
Yes.
I was reading some of the responses from students and parents, and what's the philosophy or the policy versus on participation versus competitiveness of the team?
For intramural biking?
No, in sports in general, in the high school activities. What's that policy, and does that change from varsity to junior varsity
I
to
would
sophomore?
say it changes from team to team even, and I would say having coached 9th grade softball as an example and coached varsity softball, I think even as you move from level to level, the coaches try to start off, kind of even playing field, or, through PLAY, that kind of happens as they shift, as they grow and become a little bit older and more competitive. You start off with everybody's equal, and then gradually it moves up into, okay, it might be, 80% of the kids are all going to have the same amount of time, and then a couple kids might have a little bit more, and then, it kind of moves in that direction. And I would say that we talk with the coaches about their philosophies and just making sure that we're aware of what it is and sharing with the parents and players what it is. But I would say it kind of varies from team to team.
Yeah. Because that was one of the threads I picked up reading some of the responses. So,
okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Off running again. Move on to Circle of Friends preschool rates.
Hello, I'll be presenting on behalf of Deb Williams and myself. We work together, and in your board packets on page 135, you'll find information regarding a proposed increase for our Circle of Friends preschool. We did a study of the comparable area, and the ranges are from 128 to 168 per month for the 2-day. Our request is to go from 125 to 135 for next school year for the 2-day. The rates in the comparable area for the 3-day are $175 to $224, and our proposal is to go from the current rate of $165 to $185. Please note there has been no increase since 2011-12, and the reason for the request, and you'll notice a higher percent increase for the 3-day versus the 2-day, and that's because when you divide out the number of days and the same amount of hours, our daily rate for the 2-day is at $18.28, and the 3-day option with this, if you approve this increase, would be at $18.29. And what happened is we had, that brings us closer in line, so that if you're in the 2-day program, you're paying the same daily rate within the 3-day, but we didn't feel we could do that in 1 year, so we'll look at it again in the future. But the discrepancy in that in the past was $1.63 per day, which adds up. So when you look at the other programs in the community and surrounding areas or similar type programs, their daily rates match, whether it's a 2-day or a 3-day. The reason for the request for the increase is because we would like to help subsidize. As you know, this is a community collaborative preschool model which uses school readiness funding, and it's not expected to be self-supported by the fees collected. A lot of times you'll see me up here asking for a fee increase for a community ed program where it is required that it be self-supported by fees. In this particular program, it's designed to reach some of our youngest learners who may need scholarships. So for example, within our budget, we often give between $24,000 to $30,000 out in either a full scholarship or a partial scholarship. So the preschool actually serves what we call the typically developing early childhood student, and the early childhood special ed students. They contract for spots in our preschool, and then it also is for the school readiness students who their families, their income level it's not quite low enough for them to qualify for Head Start preschool, and yet they still need an affordable option, and so that's why the school readiness funding is available. So the request is for you to consider this rate increase. What's missing from this is the registration fee, and that is $75, but that would remain the same. There's no request to increase that. Are there any questions or comments?
Seeing none, a motion to accept the increase of the rates for the Circle Friends Preschool.
I'll make a motion.
By Lee. Second?
Second.
By Stacy. Question? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried 7-0.
Thank you.
Move on to the Prior Lake High School course proposals. Mr. Lund.
For Chair Simpson, school board members, Dr. Groover. What I have before you is 4 courses we would like approval on to implement for next year. These have been through the district curriculum advisory committee. Also, just a point of note, these, when you look at our registration manual, these are the only changes for this year. We'll come back with that, but as I come forward with these, I'd just like you to understand that's the venue we use. Medical Spanish, we have Spanish in the high school, obviously. We have Ms. Dunkley, who worked in business before she came in Spanish, so there was a high need for this out in the medical field, and basically it's translating medical records, medical transcription. They don't practice these words in a Spanish class. This is nothing typical. It'd be a quarter-long elective class for those students who are going on in Spanish. Typically they should be finished with Spanish too, but not only are they learning a language, they're picking up a career skill if they want to go into college and move on to Spanish. It would be a quarter-long course, and like our other courses, it's based on enrollment. 24 we offer, less than that we don't. But she thought this would be a great course because it's translating to a job skill.
You want me to wait and go question by question on each course, or you want me to go through all four? All work through. The next one we have is Biochemistry 3. Originally, we had Biochemistry 1 and Biochemistry 2. They went to 2 trimesters, and then when we changed to the 6-period day, went to quarters, we didn't quite get through everything. It also fulfills the science credit for those students who aren't strong in science and going on. They took Biochemistry 1, Biochemistry 2, and a trimester of astronomy. We're in quarters now, and we have a little gap in there for students that we've been filling with earth science. Earth science is no longer required. It's 9th grade science. As of 3 years ago, we migrated out of that. We'll be dropping earth science. So in order for a student to get a full year of their science credit without taking physics or chemistry, this way they can take Biochemistry 1, Biochemistry 2, Biochemistry 3, which would cover what we used to do in trimesters, and then they can add the astronomy and get their full year science credit out of the way. These are for your non-science students fulfilling their state requirement of their 3 years of science for graduation. Trying to make sure I get them in order here. Spanish 6 AP, right now we top out at Spanish 5, but our middle school students now are starting to come into the high school in Spanish 3, and they'll continue the sequence. We would like to add Spanish 6, but we want to make it an AP class. If we're getting, we're already offering Spanish 5 concurrent enrollment through Mankato, so we would like to offer the AP Spanish Culture and Literacy. Jana Hidalgo will be the one looking at getting certified to teach it. Again, as with all the courses, we need 24 students or more to enroll in it. The requirements to get in an AP course are just simply a C or better in the preceding course in Spanish. And with the Spanish immersion, in about 10 years, we're going to have to look more. The last one is Fabrication Laboratory. We've talked about that several times. Mr. Marish and Ms. Reinhardt are both working right now on a course description that merges both the Fabrication Laboratory and the business end of it. I should remember. Design, Build, Innovations Incorporated, I think is what they're choosing to call it. We've been hashing out some names that tell what it is, but we want the students know what it is. We don't want to make it too fancy. Right now, the proposal is actually to team teach that class with the 2 of them for the first year. Both of them will be going out this summer to Matamidi. We don't know when that training is. We've been seeking out with Matamidi to get the Fabrication Laboratory training on that. I just want to say that that's different than the MIT certification. The MIT certification is a full year process, which we may go that way or we may collaborate with another university to do that. This would be a semester-long course. No offense, Mr. Murray. This would be a semester-long course. It's really the only way that we can get the computer design into there, the marketing and the fabrication portion of it. They would still get a grade at the end of each quarter. And those are the 4 classes I have for you. I'll open up to any questions that hopefully I can answer.
Do you have any questions?
Mike? On that last course, I see that there's the estimated cost. Is that just a startup for the first year, or will there be ongoing? And I'm assuming, like most other courses where there's course materials, there's a fee for the students for the disposal, or no?
No, if they keep it, yes. So there will be a fee. The startup cost, my understanding, and I'm not the expert, the startup cost for the Fabrication Laboratory is the big cost. The cost of the materials are not a lot. In fact, this $84,000, I think, is that the startup cost in here? I don't have it. Approximately. I would say only ongoing materials year in and year out, maybe $5,000 to $8,000. That there will be a minimum project that students do, like we do in our fee structure now, that is free to students because it's free education. But those students want to do larger projects, more complicated projects, but they have to pay an upcharge. The vast majority, 95% of this is a startup fee. It's the training, the cost of the equipment. And we have some of it, or it would be higher than that.
We've covered that already in our budget.
Yeah, we'll be bringing back a Fab Lab recommendation. This is right now approximate. We're working with a named university.
So
I'm also
number will be included when we start planning for next year's budget.
Yeah,
I am also sending out letters starting this week looking for partnerships from in materials, expertise, time, talent, and machinery from businesses. That letter's drafted. It's gone through Ms. Mussman, Dr. Groover. I know Mr. Wolf has offered to help at some contacts, but I'll be sending out about a dozen letters this week asking for that also. I'm hoping to raise a good portion.
In addition, the unnamed university we are pursuing in January. We've tentatively set a meeting with Tony Albright to help facilitate that meeting. So
More to come.
more to come.
Dave, do you have any idea? I know it's early, but I mean, are you going to limit the sections on this? Is it just going to be one section for the?
No,
Fab
if I
Lab?
got 2 sections, we'd go with 2. If I got 3, that's the way we do with any of our other courses. The machinery itself, once it's set up, it's just how many hours a day you use the room. The material cost, at least initially, and I've read a lot about it. I've taken what the Fab Lab organization has. I've taken what IT recommends, and I've been to Matamita 4 times. The material cost, surprisingly, was not that great. What you would think. I mean, it's not that great. The equipment is considerable. And we have some. We have CNC routers. We have CNC lathes. We needed to, in this cost is built in some upgrading. Some of those were put in 12 years ago, and a couple of them never used. Well, the software is outdated now. And we need some new screens on some. But this is reasonable because we also don't, besides new furniture in rooms, we need to peel out some tables. And Mr. Marish and I have been taking an extensive look at this, and we don't think there will be realistically any structural changes or anything to rooms. It's just changing furniture and reorganizing where we do our small engines. So that's just moving racks and a paint job and some new tables. So this is pretty much all equipment. And then training is built in there for 2 instructors.
It looks like if we get the equipment, we could possibly use it for community education also.
Eventually, we'd like to go to that. We would need to make sure that who's ever teaching those community ed classes has gone through the proper training because of the equipment involved, the computer systems involved, and I know Dr. Groover and I have talked a lot about that. Absolutely, eventually, that's where we want to go.
In addition, the robotics team has made a request already for said allotted time. So.
And our community education team has gone up to look at the Matamita Fab Lab and came back very excited about the opportunities it can provide for our community. So they're eager to get going as well.
Right. And they, the Matamita offers a training we can go. It'll be important that whoever's ever in that lab is properly trained because there's some pretty sophisticated equipment that will be in there.
Any further questions? Do I have a motion to accept the course proposals for high school for next year? By Chad, second.
I'll second the motion.
By Rich. Any further questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 7-0.
Thank you very much.
We'll move on to the Demographic Study Review Committee.
Yes. Last year, we had a 5-year demographic study completed by schoolfinances.com. One of the recommendations they made was to pull together a small group annually to review the current status of our enrollment and to make any needed changes, alterations to the numbers that they were recommending. So we have pulled together for just briefly for 2 meetings, one in November and one in December, a community group that included parents and staff members, administrators, school board members, and then representatives from both of our cities, City of Savage and City of Prior Lake. What we found is that the recommendation from school finances for this coming year of 14-15 was that we would grow again by 100 students. What we found is that our school district is continuing to grow in enrollment beyond really what we had even anticipated just a year ago. The housing permits in Prior Lake are going to end up somewhere between 180 and 190 this year. And in Savage, they are going to be approximately 135. And with these numbers in mind and the improved economy in our community and in our area, student enrollment is expected to increase a little bit more as well. So the committee had a good, robust conversation about what those numbers should be. Should we keep to that 100 or should we raise it? And after much discussion, the committee is recommending that we raise that expectation for next year to 125, knowing that in 15-16, that number will rise again, this time to 150 to 180. So it'll be important for us to look at these numbers annually, the way they recommended last year, to see where that growth is. Excuse me, and if we realize that growth as we see it in the projections. They also had recommendations about open enrollment that you can see in your report. We'll be looking at open enrollment in January the way that we have in the past, and we'll take those recommendations into account. Basically, it's looking at the high school with limiting those numbers the way we have in the past, but also looking at Five Hawks and Red Tail Ridge as being areas where there is tremendous growth in the housing area nearby both of those schools. So to look at those elementaries as closed for the coming year. So it's important to pull our group together annually, and we've asked this group if they would come together again next year, and they have accepted that challenge, and we'll be adding to that committee. We have preschool family representation as well as elementary, knowing that the growth is about incoming students, our younger children, and then we'll move that forward. So we will reconvene in 2014 after that October 1st enrollment date, and we have those firm numbers, and then we'll predict again what might happen in 15-16.
Do I have a motion to accept the Demographic Study Review Committee report as follows? Dan, second?
Second.
Chad, any questions about this?
Quick question for Shane. In the coming years, do you have a plan to look at the facilities? And then in years past, we've always had like a circuit breaker kind of deal.
Right.
If it gets above, we
Sure.
take action.
Absolutely. I think what we'll find, we'll get closer to that next year after we see the true impact of the all-day kindergarten has on our elementary enrollment, on our kindergarten enrollment, as well as immersion, and also to see if these numbers continue to build across the system. At the end of last year, we had some pockets where we had we had growth that was rather random, where those pockets filled in over the summer months into August, so we started our year higher than we thought. We're waiting to see what happens in this coming year, how we end the year, as well as how we begin the year, and that will trigger that conversation about where is our space. But we did do an elementary space audit this fall that I think we shared with you last week, so that you can see where those opportunities are for kindergarten classrooms and classrooms throughout our elementary system, so that we knew we have the space for our incoming all-day kindergarten. So as we move forward, we'll look again at how are those rooms being filled, are they being filled, and what's the impact going forward. So.
Any further questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries 7-0. Mr. Holmberg with the 2014-15 calendar.
Good evening again. On behalf of Meet and Confer and the calendar subcommittee of Meet and Confer, presenting to you tonight a draft of the 14-15 school year calendar. This was a process the group started a couple months ago, just talking about the calendar for next year. The ideas that came forward were put together, making sure we met all the statutes and things that we need to go into a calendar. It has been sent out to all buildings for additional feedback. It has also gone through the administrators for additional feedback and back to Meet and Confer for another look, just to make sure that this is the calendar bringing forward. And it is a calendar that we are bringing forward for approval this evening. Just a couple of highlights. There are some differences in this calendar, one of which at the elementary, gauging the work that we did last year with our Great Start to Kindergarten, which was that early assessment. We're looking to pattern that for kindergarten, but as well as grades 1 through 5 students. And so the first 2 days of the calendar are reserved for elementary assessment, and that's going to be something we're going to be developing and communicating to parents as we move through the rest of this year, pending board approval. Secondly, and so the result of that is it does minimize the number of student contact days from 172 to 170, but is comparable to what other districts around us are doing, and we're still meeting, we're well above what the state is requiring for minimum minutes for instruction for our elementary age students. Secondly, you will see some changes in how we're looking to communicate with parents in terms of how conferences are scheduled, as well as just a couple of new items there. One is an orientation night at the high school on September 18th, and then elementary conferences pushing later after first quarter and after third quarter, taking into some of the recommendations or some of the concepts that the AGR committee is looking at. And I believe we were able to get all of those in and have a 2-week winter break and a spring break. So I've heard that that's also positive as well. So just as a brief update and for your review and approval tonight.
Have a motion to accept the 2014-2015 school calendar.
So moved.
By Dan, second.
Second.
By Stacy. Any comments or questions?
Something to note too, it is a later start this year as well. It's the week after Labor Day. And so taking into account some of the decisions we made with our current calendar with construction this summer, want to point that out too. So my apologies for interrupting.
Hi. I know when we approved a calendar a couple years ago that had us with the spring break the first week of April, there were several of us that were on the board at that time that weren't real thrilled with having to do that to our community. So I'm glad to see that the later start didn't put the spring break in the middle of April, because I think at that point it was coinciding with the end of a quarter. So I'm glad to see that we kind of challenged that paradigm, and so I would hope that in future years that spring break would be in the month of March, where I think most of our community has weighed in pretty strongly. They would prefer to see it. So I'm really hopeful that that becomes a trend or a stable. And I think, quite honestly, I think the community would really like to know that year in, year out, spring break is going to be this week of March, whatever it is. Because I think that people make plans not only year to year, but in several cases, if they're going to be planning a big trip, it may even be a couple years out. So knowing that it's the second or the third week or whatever, I think is a pretty strong request. I believe that I know I've heard from members of the community. I've got many of the other board members have as well.
Yes, we've heard that. The committee did take that recommendation very much to heart, and next year's calendar we are starting much earlier, so we have set aside time in January to start a calendar for 15, 16. 15, I'm sorry, 15, 16. So if anyone would like to join that committee, it's very robust discussion.
I'll keep that in mind.
Okay. I have a maybe for Dan. Actually,
up for new things.
It's interesting. Next year does follow the same lines of this year with the way the weeks work out. So the calendar should look very much the same, barring we find some issue with this calendar. So, motion to second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Half-day kindergarten discussion.
Yes, I sent out a memo to school board members last week on Thursday, and have that discussion for you this evening. Over the past several months, we've been soliciting input from our preschool families, parents that have a 4.5 to 5-year-old student right now, who are considering the all-day option, the half-day option, the immersion option that you've just approved, and we've been getting some wonderful feedback from them. We offered an information evening for them in early October and had a pre-registration option for them. Over the period of the last 2 months, we have been getting lots of information back that has been most helpful to us as we've been planning for the future. Originally, we thought maybe, well, currently we have over 60% of our families choosing a tuition-based kindergarten option for their children, and then the others choosing the half-day option. So originally, we thought without the tuition, we might have 80% of our families choosing a full-day kindergarten option. In fact, that number has risen significantly to about 95% if you include the immersion option in there. We currently have 58 families that have indicated that even knowing as little as they do about the immersion, that they would seriously consider putting their child into the immersion option in the fall. We've had 256 families that have indicated that they would like to choose the full-day option at this point. And for the half-day option, we've had only 14 of our families indicate that that might be an option for us. With your decision tonight, we know that we'll move forward and we'll continue to provide all of the groundwork needed and have a January 9th open forum for families to learn more about the Spanish immersion. We have a kindergarten committee that's working very diligently to develop what will this full-day kindergarten look like. When the legislature approved this and put this into place, it really is a game changer for us because it isn't a half-day with extensions anymore. It really is a full day of learning for our children that's developmentally appropriate, filled with lots of social and emotional development as well as academic. So we'll move forward with that with great intentions. But it leaves us looking at our half-day option and knowing that with just 14 families indicating that they, at this point, would be interested in it, what do we do? So we've been listening to what's happening in other districts across the state, across the metro area, and at this time, it's my recommendation that we follow a similar pattern, and that is to work with individual families. We have 6 elementary schools, and currently all of our all-day kindergarten options are held at the home school, the neighborhood school. If a family is really committed to a half-day option for their child, then they will work with that elementary principal to determine which part of that day would be most appropriate. The bus will pick them up in the morning or deliver them home in the afternoon, depending on what the schedule is for that school. Some of the schools, and most of them, have that learning with reading and math in the morning, but a few of our schools have it in the afternoon with their specialists being first thing in the morning. So we'll have to wait to see how that falls out for them to know exactly. But the principals will work individually with that family to provide a half-day experience. We could provide transportation one way with the family choosing to pick their child up at that appropriate time. And that's what I'm recommending for us to adopt as we move forward, so that when we get to January 23rd and we have the registration for families, that they know exactly what it is that we're offering to them, and we can be clear about what our intentions are as we move forward. We really want to respect each family's decision and the reasons why they're making a decision for their child, but we also know that we have to have a model in place that meets our needs as well. So that's the recommendation that I have.
Do I have a motion to accept the half-day option? Okay. Do I have a motion to accept the recommendation for the full-day kindergarten with the option of the half-day program provided for the, by Chad, second?
Second.
By Dan. Any questions regarding this? I know we came up with a letter that'll be drafted out to parents in regards to it. I think it was very appropriate.
I guess some questions, right? Do you foresee principals offering both in the morning and AM and PM?
I think it would be dependent by site. So most probably, it'll be site-specific, and Patrick could speak to that in any more detail, but generally, if one of your kindergartner classes has a specialist in the AM, so does the other class.
Yes,
So-
and so thus you probably want the family there in the afternoon when the core academic stuff would be happening more in a whole. And it might be flipped at a different building depending upon that schedule. That schedule is dictated by our specialists and how we fit them into work most economically for the district. Ideally. So there could be some differences per elementary building. There could be. They might all be the same next year. We won't know that until we get closer to the school year.
Mike?
Was there a number that we would have had to have seen for half-day folks that would have made it viable? I'm sure that question will be asked. I mean, I guess when we look at, if it's at 18 is the minimum, we would have at least needed 36 to have one teacher, right? But even beyond that, the transportation factors in that, right now we've got the route in the middle of the day that brings home the morning and picks up the afternoon, right?
Right.
So it's more than just 36 that we would have needed, correct?
In my mind, it's more of that 75 that we look at for our immersion. Somewhere between 60 and 75 to 80 would be a mass that would be, then you'd say, okay, now at least we have enough opportunities for families that we could have a morning and an afternoon or have them all in the morning and we have a place for them. But even extrapolating out the model of the pre-registration, it doesn't look like we'll even get
Fallen
close.
pretty significantly short.
Yes.
Which I think is a message that we need to, I happen to have a family member that, has an incoming kindergartner, so to be able to, share that, and I'm sure the rest of us wanting to have the, just the brief message to say, well, it really did come down to there just was not enough interest in by quite a bit, right?
And it isn't just our district. It is across the metro area and across the state that families, given the option of having a full day option for their child, are choosing that by 95%. Even just having not all of them in, but having a significant number of them in, that's a pretty significant number.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries 7-0. We'll move on to the superintendent contract. Just have a little statement to read, and it's basically on behalf of the School Board Certified Committee Personnel Committee. It's my honor to announce the early agreement with Dr. Sue Ann Gruber to continue to remain the superintendent of the Prior Lake Savage Area School District. Dr. Sue Ann Gruber will retire as of September 2nd and January 2nd, 2014, and then remain as superintendent of the district for the next 3.5 years as the superintendent of schools. The Prior Lake Savage Area School Board, in concert with Dr. Sue Ann Gruber, feel the district is well positioned for the future and has many exciting projects and programs ongoing and many just initiated. We feel the direction and leadership given by Dr. Gruber is in its current form and is well fits our strategic plan for our district. The board has been presented with the contracts for Dr. Gruber. Do I have a motion to accept the contracts?
So made.
By Stacy. Second.
Second the motion.
By Rich. Any?
I think it's December 31st is when I retire, January 3rd is when I come back.
I do have a correction. It is December 31st with a start date of January 1st. There needs to be one date correction in that. So. Yeah, do you have a motion to amend the motion?
Okay, I'll make that.
Okay, Stacy. All those in favor for the amendment?
Aye.
Opposed? carries 7-0. Any questions about the contract?
Enjoy your retirement.
Thank you.
3 days
Keep
work
you
well
busy.
for you.
Yeah.
And enjoy the weekend.
Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries 7-0. Congratulations.
Thank you. I would just like to say that in 2008, I was really very honored to be asked to be the superintendent of Prior Lake Savage Area Schools. And I have loved being the superintendent here. I did have intentions of, I was discussing that word, retirement, but since this fall, I've had long conversations with many of you here at this table about what I might do. I am feeling like we are on the right on the brink of having many of our dreams realized in this district, and many of them we heard tonight. The immersion, the new coursework, the Fab Lab, the calendar with K-5 assessment days is huge, huge, huge for us to do as a district, and will reap beautiful rewards for our families and for our students. The building at the high school that continues on a daily basis, that will open in the fall, the iPads that are being dispersed right now, and will be there for our 8th graders next fall. And the list goes on, and I feel like right now is important to have the continuity of leadership, and so working with this fabulous board is an honor for me, and I look forward to the years ahead and continuing our good work together. I think the best days are still ahead of us. So thank you.
Anyone else? I know it's been my honor to work with you. We appreciate it. We have, like I said, started many exciting projects and would like to see those. I know many of them are very busy projects, but we have exciting things to come. We'll move on to the policy, second and final reading of facilities guidelines.
For me to start this. This is on page 156 of your small board packet. This has to do with our turf field rules and procedures. Although not a policy, it's something we wanted in front of our school board and in front of our community well ahead of the turf that will be in place by next fall. Our committee made up of Stacy Ruel and Lee Schimmick and I met with Gina Germscheid, who is in charge of our facility planning, and she completed a study of all the area and all the metropolitan school districts and the use of turf and the fees that they charge. And we came up with a model that we believe is very fair. We also looked at the Savage Dome. We wanted to certainly be in line with that and not going beyond that, but we also looked specifically at school districts. And before you, on page 156, is the plan that you have seen before, and we have for you tonight for a vote.
Do you have a motion to accept the turf field rules and procedures?
I'll make a motion.
By Lee, second?
Second.
By Stacy. Any questions regards to this? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries 7-0. Move on to the superintendent's report.
And I will be brief. I've already mentioned many of the things that are happening that I'm very excited about, but right now our iPad carts are being deployed in many of our schools, and the others are getting ready to receive them. The ones that are in the process of being delivered now to Five Hawks, Jeffers, Pond, and Westwood, and the ones next in line include Glendale, Red Tail Ridge, Greenwood, and Edgewood, with the middle schools and high school already being having their carts on site. So there's lots of excitement as we end the year and begin this new year, knowing that our teachers and our administrators are really looking forward to having this opportunity to share this new technology with our students. The You just read in the newspaper, I hope, that our district's Teacher of the Year honor roll has been announced by our Prior Lake Savage Area Educational Association, and each honoree is listed on our district website as well. The Teacher of the Year celebration is scheduled for January 16th at Twin Oaks Media Center from 3:30 to 5 p.m. We are hoping to have a similar reception for them here at the district office before our January 13th school board meeting, and more details to follow. And this past week, we've had several of our schools participating in that worldwide event called An Hour of Code, in which students took part in 1 hour of introductory computer science. The goal of the program was to demystify coding and show students that anyone can learn the basics of becoming a maker, a creator, or an innovator. Teachers used tutorials from code.org that were created by some of the elite in the software industry and helped walk students through some of the basic computer science. More than 12,000 organizers hosted Hour of Code across 144 countries during Computer Science Education Week, which was December 9th through 15th. Pretty exciting stuff going on. So those are my reports for you tonight.
Thank you. Administrative reports, Julie, Jeff, Matt. Okay. Board reports.
Adam have any reports?
I just had one about the calendar committee. It was a wonderful opportunity and a great group to work with. Adam?
You can tell them your news. Your personal news.
Oh, that's okay. I'll try to get you guys out of here. So we just had Sadie's this weekend. Will probably be the last Sadie's we have for a couple of years. We worked really hard, and it's never really been a big event, so I guess it's just not really a Prior Lake thing. But other than that, we were just in the newspaper via Miss Egan, and for the fundraiser we attempted at for the typhoon. So we're gonna start. We're in the process of starting a new fundraiser, just typical class competition. So we are hoping that will be more successful. Other than that, we're caroling for kind of crossing this weekend and getting ready for the rest of the year.
Thank you. Future events, there's no school for winter break December 23rd through January 1st. Class resumes January 2nd. We have a organizational meeting, regular school board meeting, January 13th at 6:30 with a 7 o'clock regular board meeting. We have the MSBA Annual Leadership Conference, January 16th and 17th. If you need information, check with Martha, and also RSVP, please, if you're interested in attending, even if it's for a portion of the event. So a lot of good information brought forth down there. So, any other events? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Right, Dan.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries 7-0. Thanks.